Hi everyone, and welcome to your lecture to Bioinformatics for Biodiversity. Now this is quite a lengthy lecture before we actually get to the bioinformatics side of things because we've got so much to cover. Biodiversity is such a massive subject. I have broken it into bits for you, so do feel free to pause it and come back to it whenever you like, but we'll get started. So biodiversity, I'm sure you've heard of it, is short for biological diversity, and it refers to the amount and variety of different organisms living within a population. Now, a population can be as small as a pond's ecosystem and as large as the planet. It is the result of millions of years of evolution. There are three kinds: ecosystem, ecological, and genetic. Ecosystem and ecological biodiversity are quite similar. Ecosystem biodiversity refers to the amount of different ecosystems present in the region or globally. So Earth has a very high ecosystem biodiversity. There are lots of different ecosystems on Earth. I'm sure you can think of a few. You've got marine ecosystems, rainforest ecosystems, woodland ecosystems. Ecological biodiversity refers to the biodiversity seen within the ecosystem, so the amount of bird species within the Amazon and the number of toucans in the Amazon. I've just taken that as a quick example. I'm sure you can think of many more. Genetic biodiversity refers to the amount of genetic variation within a population. It's often a specific population of a species. So we'll take the toucan again. So for instance, the genetic diversity of toucans within the Amazon rainforest. So having a greater genetic diversity in a population increases the chance that the population will be able to adapt to future events. So a higher frequency of potentially disease resistance or heat-cold tolerance genes within a population. So it just essentially kind of future-proofs the population. Now, this is quite a wordy slide, and I do apologise, but we will get through it. If genetic diversity decreases as a population reduces, which is often the case, this is often caused by habitat destruction, disease, or environmental changes, then the frequency of different genes in the population can change, and some could be lost from the population completely. Now, when it decreases to such a small point, the population decreases so much, it's actually called a genetic bottleneck. This can have a massive impact on the future population fitness. So in this example, let's just pretend the yellow beads in the bottle below are organisms that have resistance to a devastating disease, and the white beads are organisms that have a high heat tolerance. And let's say the bottleneck is caused by habitat destruction. Now, if after the bottlenecking event, so habitat destruction, the environmental temperature rose, for example global warming, or the devastating disease now struck, this population could be completely wiped out. Now they're very, very generalistic saying that it's for disease resistance and for heat tolerance, but we'll just take that as a quick example for you. So you get the idea. You get a nice wide range of genetic diversity, a bottlenecking event happens, and suddenly you haven't got that future proofing there. Now, if genetic diversity keeps decreasing or is very low, an inbreeding depression can occur. An inbreeding depression is caused when the genetic diversity in a population drops so low that the breeding will occur between genetically similar organisms, and this can cause lots of problems. So for instance, this may cause deleterious recessive alleles to be expressed within a population, which can obviously cause poor offspring health or reduced reproductive rates. So the image on the right hand side you can see is a great example. So it starts off with two different snakes interbreeding, one with a recessive deleterious allele and the dominant allele. Now it's not a problem if it's recessive, you need to have two recessive genes for it to be expressed. Now this doesn't occur until inbreeding happens. As soon as inbreeding happens, the two recessive alleles are able to be expressed, and you have a deleterious member of the population. Now this could be anything. It could make them more susceptible to disease or something along those lines. And it's not the only thing that can happen when there's an inbreeding depression, but feel free to have a research of inbreeding depressions and have a look at all the other kinds of problems that can occur. But poor offspring health and reduced reproductive rates are two of the main problems with this inbreeding depression. So I just quickly put this diagram up there just to help you if that makes any sense to you. So if we start off with decreasing genetic diversity, this increases the likelihood that a population could be decimated by disease or environmental change. This then could reduce the population size further, causing a genetic bottleneck. This can potentially cause an inbreeding depression, which reduces offspring fitness and reduces reproductive rates, causing a decrease in genetic diversity. So it can become quite a vicious circle. So why is biodiversity? Now, I'm not going to touch too much on this. This is something that I want you to research on your own. We will go through some examples later on in the presentation, but it's something that really, if you kind of look for yourself, you might find more interesting. So essentially, the biggest problem is the decline or loss of just one species can have a massive impact on many other organisms in that ecosystem. An animal's relationship with its environment is very complex and it's very sensitive. Many species of animals have timed reproductive cycles, migration, hunting, feeding with their environment, and food source availability. So, such an intricate relationship, when unbalanced, has the chance of collapsing, putting that species at risk of extinction if they cannot adapt to the new conditions. Now, this might be ringing some familiar bells with you if you've ever heard of biodiversity problems before. So, like I've already said, I'm not going to go too much into it. We will go through some more specific examples later on, but please do research your own. I mean, have a look at maybe local populations and have a look at the kind of conservation efforts around where you live. That might be more interesting to you. Conversely, you can also have a look at the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. If there's a particular organism you want to look at, type it into that webpage and it comes up with all the kind of conservation status and conservation recommendations. It's quite interesting, so do have a look.